For cameras today to shoot your way, it's Shoot-Tan. For every camera need.
Shoot-Tan Camera, downtown on Wacker Drive at LaSalle, presents the most versatile Canon ever, the computerized Canon A1. This extraordinary 35mm camera gives you 6 different exposure modes, 5 automatic, 1 manual, each for a different application. For fleeting expressions, fast-moving subjects, or any kind of action, the Canon A1 offers...
The Canon A1 is a 35mm professional SLR camera released by Canon in 1978, and it was pretty groundbreaking at the time, and even by today's standards, it's still very modern, I must say, but we'll get into that in a minute. I've had this camera now for a few months. It quickly became my #1 camera when I'm going on holiday or even just going into town. It's the camera I always pick up and take with me. And there's some very good reasons for that. I originally had the Canon AE1, which I loved, and that was my first ever film camera that I had. But sadly, it broke down on me and it was just too expensive, all the repairs I had to do. So I thought I'll keep it just in case, but maybe I should invest in a new 35mm SLR. And the Canon A1 was the first one I saw when I looked online. I got this on Facebook Marketplace and I've made a whole video on that. In fact, you can find it on my channel where I go and buy this camera and show some pictures through a test roll that I did on it. But that was a few months ago. It was shot on a very cheap expired roll of film, and I've had this camera for a few months now, so I thought I could give you my honest review on the Canon A1. As I was saying, this camera is very modern. In fact, it was the first camera to offer a fully automatic program AE mode, as well as all the other typical shutter priority, aperture priority, and manual modes, which basically means this camera has fully automatic settings if you want it to have, but you can also be shooting in fully manual, which is really, really cool, especially back then. That this was seen as groundbreaking technology. So the camera itself is just your typical Canon SLR. It's very well built. It's a fully metal body and it feels very rugged and well built, but it's not overly heavy. I always just strap it around my shoulder and I've never really noticed it on my side. It takes Canon FD mounts like most Canons from that time period, which is a good thing actually, because there's so many on the market and they actually tend to be very good. I currently on this camera have the 50mm f1.8, which is my favorite lens to use with Canon cameras. It's such a sharp lens and being able to go down to 1.8 is really, really helpful in low light situations. But FD lenses, there are lots of them and they tend to be very cheap, which is a plus. So there's a mode dial, which includes program, shutter priority, aperture priority, and of course manual, which as I was saying was very advanced for the time. All you have to do to put it in fully automatic is slide up to where it says P, and then select the A for automatic on your Canon lens, and then the camera will do the rest. All you have to do is look through the viewfinder and focus. And when you look through the viewfinder, there is a little LED display which will tell you your shutter speed and your aperture, and it just tells you which settings the camera has selected, which is always a useful tool to have. Now, having an LED display like this obviously means that the camera needs a battery to work, and that battery is the 6V PX28, which is very common. It's sort of all the batteries that cameras from that era take, and the battery life is pretty good. I've had the same battery in this camera for months now and it still is going strong. You can test the battery by hitting the little button and then the little LED to the right will flash quickly, which indicates that your battery is still fine. I like the viewfinder a lot. I find it very clear and very bright. And a lot of people say that the LED screen in the viewfinder is a bit distracting. I personally don't find so. I just find it very helpful and it's in small red writing, so it's pretty easy to ignore if you really want to. There's also a split image and micro prism focusing screens inside the viewfinder to help you focus, which is a great thing I love about Canon SLRs. Now you'll see on my camera it's not fully black. The film rewind crank fell off when I was in London and I don't really know how it fell off, but I lost it, so I had to use the one for my Canon AE1, which is why that one is silver on my camera. But other than that, this camera feels very well built. It feels strong, and that is something I really appreciate from cameras. I don't like buying a camera, and even if it takes amazing pictures, feeling like it's going to break down on me or feeling like parts are going to fall off. This camera feels really well built. All the electronics work fine, and from everything that I've read online, it's pretty reliable. most people haven't had issues, which is always a plus. I've not had issues with mine. Like the Canon AE1, it's got a depth of field preview button as well as an AE lock, which is good for the more manual settings side of this camera. Now, the main selling point of the Canon A1, which I've mentioned a few times, is the fully automatic setting. Now, this setting is very good, surprisingly good when you think how old this camera technically is. I tend to use it more than I feel comfortable using it. I really love the idea of shooting manual on analog cameras. That's why I like using analog cameras, the idea of setting your aperture and all your different exposures, having to manually focus is really what drew me to film photography. But this camera is very useful. So when I'm on holiday or with my family and I'm not taking a portfolio level picture, it's nice to just be able to put it on automatic and let the camera do the rest. And as I was saying, it does it very well. I've never had a badly exposed picture when I've shot in automatic, and I've shot quite a lot of pictures in automatic. The only downside, I guess you could say to that, is that the light meter obviously works when you're taking a picture. That's how it exposes it. So you can't expose for the shadows or for the highlights, for example. You can only really expose what you're wanting to take a picture of. And that means that if you're taking a picture, let's say, of a white house that's got a lot of sunlight on it, the exposures could be a bit off. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter because you can just put it in manual if you're not sure. And as I was saying, if you press down the shutter lightly, it will tell you what exposure settings it will use to take a picture, so you can base everything on that. Now, I would say the biggest sort of downside with this camera is that it uses a battery. Now, this camera needs a battery to work. You can't use it whatsoever without a battery. It's got an electronic shutter, obviously for the viewfinder display, and a few other things. If you don't have a battery, you can't press the shutter, you can't use this camera at all, which is very annoying. I always like cameras that are fully manual when it comes to that side of things, where you don't need a battery. It just makes me feel a lot safer when using a camera like this. I don't want to be on a project and run out of battery. So when you're using a Canon A1, always make sure you've got a spare battery with you or somewhere near you, because what you don't want to happen is to be midway through a shoot and then you run out of battery and you just can't use the camera anymore. That is the most annoying thing, I would say, and I'm getting a bit paranoid because it's been a few months now that my camera battery is just going to die on me when I don't have a battery on me. But to be completely honest, other than that, which a lot of people might think is a very bad flaw, which a lot of cameras have, to be honest, this camera is really, really good. I seriously can't find a flaw in it. And as I was saying, I bring it with me everywhere. It's a good camera for that transition between beginner and more amateur photographer. If you've been taking film photos for a few months now and you want to sort of upgrade lightly your camera, something like a Canon A1 I think is a great option because it does feel more professional. It was targeted to professionals when it came out, and having that diversity between automatic settings and manual settings is a really nice versatile tool to have. It's got a great choice of lenses like Canons from this time do, and it takes very sharp pictures. I'm going to be showing pictures at the end of this video, that's why I've not shown any yet. But overall, for the price, I bought this camera, if you saw my video you'll know, for £40. You can find these cameras for normally under £100. Usually I've looked online, for some reason they tend to be pretty expensive, anywhere from £100 to £200, which I probably would say don't buy it for that much. If you can get it for under £100, definitely worth it. Even £80–90, I would definitely jump on it, especially if it's got a good lens like the Canon 50mm lens here. But I wouldn't spend too much, and I think they've been slightly overpriced on markets recently. But overall, I absolutely love this camera. I think it's a great little option if you're wanting to get a more professional manual and automatic camera that looks really nice. It does look fantastic. And finally, to show you what this camera can do, I will now show you some of the pictures I've taken over the last few months using this camera. Those pictures were mostly shot on Kodak Ultramax 400, if you were wondering what film I was using. But that is going to wrap it up for this review. I hope you enjoyed. If you've got a Canon A1 or you're thinking about getting a Canon A1, let me know your thoughts on this camera, or let me know any questions you have on this camera. I'll be happy to answer anyone, and definitely interested to hear your thoughts on this camera. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you next Saturday for a new video.